Alright, so I recently finished reading The PASTEL City by M. John Harrison from this volume collecting all of the Viraconium stories. And I gotta say, it was really enjoyable. It was really nice. And a friend of mine, Phil Stankus, who's an amazing animator and writer, is to thank for giving me this. And it took me a better part of a decade to get to reading any of it. I read In Viraconium a while ago, and I found that mystifying and fascinating. But I hadn't delved into any of the other stories until now. But yeah, and I found that it was the sort of thing that could probably prepare you for Book of the New Sun, because it's not as murky from the get-go as that is, but it does sort of give you a slow introduction of the various elements of the world, but it's not to the same degree. But I think it can definitely be considered in that same vein. But the book itself, The PASTEL City, the first Viraconium book, for you who don't know, it's sometime in the future. It's not clear if it's Earth or another planet. I think it might be another planet, but who knows? And essentially, this civilization is in the shadow of a previous civilization that got wiped out, or just kind of wiped itself out, and sort of combination of things. But they, the current civilization is using remnants of this technology, and it's sort of a pastiche, really. It's not just a medieval setting kind of patched onto like a future setting. There are elements that feel like it's a hodgepodge within the city, this Viraconium, and I really love the descriptions of some of these places, like the pastel towers and the interior of the halls with these, windows that are views into other worlds and other places. And the main character, who's this, used to be a knight or a mercenary or something like that, who once served this order along with these other people who are now scattered, and because there's now this conflict, this sort of civil war raging, and then he has to get together with the group, get them all back together and fend off this fight. And there's a very, very well-written battle scene. I thought that was very gripping at one point. There's a lot of interesting stuff about delving into the ancient technology and these sort of golem-like things that are killing people and taking their brains. And in a lot of ways, especially with the desert, this rust desert and everything, I think it reminded me of the setting of Nausicaa, of the Valley of the Wind. And I wonder if Miyazaki had read, if PASTEL City had been translated into Japanese. It might have been, probably by that time, but the setting did remind me of that a bit. But beyond that, though, there were some thoughts I had about the work itself, because, like, truth be told, it was a very enjoyable book. It was a very enjoyable experience getting into the world. The characters were interesting, well written, but I think that it's still very much in that Tolkien-esque group quest format that I don't really find a lot of enjoyment in. And I'm saying this because I've never actually read Lord of the Rings, and that's probably going to happen sooner than later, because a lot of times in life, I'm reading these works that come down the line, that are sort of downstream from these bigger seminal works. And I think that when I actually read something that started all of this, like when I read Doc Savage, The Man of Bronze, it felt like here was all of the adventure stories that came like after in the 20th century. This is the source of the river. I was like getting a drink from that source. Felt very pure. And I feel like that's what it's going to be like when I read Lord of the Rings. So in a way, the Pastel City is sort of akin to that, where I can tell this is like way downstream of that. It's taken a turn in another direction. But I've been here before. I've gone through this. And it's beautiful. It's beautiful. It's a science romance, I guess you could kind of term it. But that is still the thing. It's the garb of SF fantasy. And if it weren't for the setting and the writing, I'd have no reason to go into it now. I think, if I'd read it 10 years ago, I'd probably be way more excited about it and would want to read into the other ones. Now, I do hear that the other books are like much different than the first one. I hear the first one is more straightforward. So if that's the case, let me know in the comments, because I probably will make time to read some of the other ones if I think they are going to be different enough. Because I've like I said, I've been there. I've read this sort of stuff before, and there's so much else for me to read that I don't think I want to just kind of read like slight variations on the same theme. And if I'm gonna do something similar, it's going to be going back to that source. But I do think there was enough mystery left in the world of the book that it was that it still left a really lingering like feel for me, especially at the end. I really love the last line, because after they resurrect these sort of old masters of the ancient technology, and they're sort of like going to have this spoiler, sorry, but it's basically they're going to have this sort of like, the old masters will learn sort of from their old mistakes, and then the new people will, the people in the contemporary setting of the book will learn kind of from them. So, but the main character, says he doesn't want all of the mysteries explained. He says, it's important to my nature that it remain a mystery to me. So I think that was a really nice way to end that book, because even if I just read that book, it was a nice segment from another world. Now there's a reason I don't read a lot of fantasy, because I wanted to mention this too. Now we're talking about it. There's a reason I don't read a lot of fantasy, and that's because, frankly, it bores me. And because so much of it post-Tolkien is just like, all I have to do is walk in. I'm in a used bookstore, I look at or just any bookstore, just look at a fantasy book, read the back of it, and I could just feel my soul like trying to leave my body. It's so excruciating, because it's just like the exhausted tropes and just kind of this wheel that just keeps churning. I remember, you might remember the huge book haul that I had last year. I made a book about it, or I made a video about it called "The Mother of All Book Hauls," and I got all these amazing fantasy and SF books, but a lot of those books, especially the ones I gave away, were like these fantasy series, this stuff that that I would never want to read, and it was just kind of like, how could you like? There's so much stuff, like this glut of fantasy. I mean, the markets get oversaturated all the time. I know Harlan Ellison, in one of his watching segments, there's a clip, he says, just like, no more dopey trilogies with fuzzy-footed creatures. And that's kind of what I've been like. I grew up seeing the Lord of the Rings movies and getting a sort of diluted version of this. So, and now all we have is this kind of wallpaper version of these characters and tropes and stuff. But the fantasy I have gotten into is the stuff pre-Tolkien, which is a lot of things that the Ballantine adult fantasy series put out, like Orlando Furioso, and I want to read the E.R. Edison stuff, and some of the Clark Ashton Smith, just off, stuff that doesn't follow in that fantasy quest mold. But that'll about do it. If I do read the next book in the Viraconium series, A Storm of Wings, I think it'll probably be much later, which probably won't matter because it seems like the chronology or the jumping into each book kind of, I think the continuity is a little loose from what I gather. But anyway, hope you have a good day.